Hey, Pastor David here. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. This is still in a time where it's just so strange for us to not be able to see one another. So you know what I did today? I came up to the church and I came in here because there's something I want to talk to you about. I want to share something out of the scripture. There's a moment in the life of Jesus that happens in Mark's gospel before he starts back to Jerusalem. Now remember, we're moving toward next week, which is Passion Week, Holy Week. And so each day I'm going to be talking about a different episode in his life that brings us to that moment. But I thought today, what I wanted to talk to you about, I needed to be in here. It's so strange standing here without anybody. I mean, it's just a big empty room. And so I want you to think about this. There was a moment when Jesus went up on top of Mount Hermon. Remember the last time, yesterday, we were talking about Caesarea Philippi. He went up on Mount Hermon, which is located very near Caesarea Philippi, probably the most northern place that he went. And he took 3 disciples with him, probably because they were the first called and there was a sense of inner circle there with him. He took 3 with him, and something happened up there that is literally a pivot. It's a turning point for the gospel. So I want to read the account. If you've got a Bible and you're following along, you're welcome to go to Mark's Gospel. You can actually find it in Mark chapter 9. I'm going to pick it up in verse 2. And after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John. He led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His clothes became radiant, intensely white. No one, whiter than anyone could bleach them on earth. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses. And they were talking with Jesus. And Peter said to Jesus, Rabbi, it's good that we're here. Let's make 3 tents, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, for they were terrified. And a cloud overshadowed them. And a voice came out of the cloud, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." And suddenly, looking around, they no longer saw anyone except Jesus only. Now let me pause there for a moment. What an incredible moment that was. The word transfigured just literally is the word we use, metamorphosis. He was changed. And I believe what happened was his glory was shining through. And that white, that reference to white, how bright it was, I think is a reference to just his divinity, his glory was shining through in that moment, and they saw him. And then Moses and Elijah appeared, and they were talking together. Now I'm not going to go in the direction of what were they talking about and why Moses and Elijah. If you think about it, Moses is the law, Elijah the prophets. It could be the law and prophets. He is the summation, fulfillment of both. Or it could be Moses and Elijah both figure prominently in the Messianic age. In other words, in the end. In fact, Malachi uses both of them as he closes out his prophecy and talks about the coming end of time and the reign of Christ. So there's this picture going on. Now, when Peter saw it, it says they were terrified. And he didn't know what to say. He's the only person in the New Testament, when he was speechless, he was still talking. I know some of us have the same problem. When we don't know what to say, we're still saying it. Well, Peter was saying it. Well, what did he say? He said, do you want us to build 3 tents? One for you and Moses and Elijah. Now, what that was, we think it was probably like a tabernacle, like a small altar of sorts. And it was a way of honoring Jesus and honoring Moses and honoring Elijah. Some people believe it's evidence that Simon Peter was a Baptist. He got on top of a mountain with Jesus, and the first thing he wanted to do is go into a building program. I don't know. I doubt that's the case. But I will tell you this. Simon Peter wanted to stay there. Who wouldn't? All of a sudden, the voice from heaven, God speaks. And notice, God doesn't say, look at my son. He actually, it's a quote from the Psalm 2. He says, listen to him. Isn't that interesting? In other words, it's not just about seeing him in his glory. It's about listening to what he said and doing what he said. Well, I would have wanted to stay there. And I know you would have too. Because see, life is a lot better on a mountaintop. To be quite honest, life is a lot better in here. And when we're together, everything's great. I mean, it's a mountaintop. Every time we gather, every weekend, it's a mountaintop. This place means so much to us. But that's not where Jesus stayed. He didn't stay up there on that mountain. He took them down. In fact, the very next few verses talk about an encounter with a young man who was demon-possessed. It's actually the last exorcism Mark records in Jesus' journey toward the cross. And it was a horrible moment. The other disciples were down there trying to cast out that spirit, and they couldn't. And Jesus shows up, and the people are crying out, and there's a crowd around him. And Jesus talks about their faith, and then he comments on something one of the parents said, "If you can, deliver him." And Jesus said, "What do you mean if you can? All things are possible to them who believe." Now here's what I want to show you. How Jesus leaves a mountaintop where everything's perfect, and he goes into a valley where life is a mess. I wish we could be together here. I wish we could be together in this room. I like the mountaintop too, but this is not the season for us on a mountaintop. We're all walking through a valley. We're all walking through something very tough. But here's the good news. The same Jesus we saw on the mountaintop that we see here, the same Jesus in his glory on the mountaintop, was the same Jesus in his power in the valley. So guess what? That same Jesus is in your neighborhood. That same Jesus is in your home. It's in your hospital room. It's in the clinics. It's in places where people are being treated and people are trying to deal with this virus. I just want you to know that as much as we love to be on that mountaintop always, that's not where life happens. It happens down in the valley. It happens where the demons are, where stuff happens. Jesus is the Lord of both. So in this season, I pray that you will find him to be the Lord of that valley where you are, the Lord of your home, the Lord of your neighborhood, the Lord of your family. Just as much and just as real as he is when we gather here in this beautiful place. May God bless you, and let's walk with him through the valley. He's the same Jesus there that he is on the mountaintops.